Well, this is pretty wild. We're in the neighbor's cornfield right now. We just found this calf. I was sitting in church. Ben called me and said that it looked like this cow had a calf, but they couldn't find it anywhere, and they saw some poop along the fence. Here she is out in the cornfield. We got to get her stood back up and put out with her mother. And I think I know who she belongs to. Belongs to this angry cow right here. See if you can roll it under the fence. Yeah, that's yours, I'll bet you.
You're welcome, girl.
All right, come on, follow your mom. There you go. Well, we just had another brand new baby calf born last night, so I got to run down to Dad's this morning. Ben's coming down. We got to give this calf a shot, squirt a couple different things up his little nose, and give him an ear tag. Then we can get back here and get back to harvest prep. How hard do you think this is going to be? Yeah. Is she a mean mother?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Let me get my bag unzipped here. All right.
Don't worry about the cow, I got her.
Okay. Glad the calf is calm.
Oh, mama, you're fine.
I don't know if it's a bull or a heifer. It's a bull.
Yep.
Tag goes on the left then.
Oh, girl. You're doing fine, girl.
All right, we are done. Let me pick up my junk.
All right.
We can get out of here.
Here you go, mama.
Okay, good job, everybody.
Look at how your front legs are.
Yeah, those legs will get extended over the next couple of days. Tendons are a little tight. I think Dad's gonna come rescue us.
Look out, there's quite a bit of drool on the seat.
Well done. Oh, oh.
Yeah.
Well, that almost couldn't have gone any better. So we'll keep an eye on that calf, make sure his front legs get straightened out over the next couple of days. I always like to get that done in the first day or so. Otherwise, after a couple days, it gets to be almost impossible to catch those calves. They get really strong and really fast. You can't even get a hold of them. In case you wondered what we were doing this morning, the stuff that I squirted up his nose is just a couple different vaccines to prevent respiratory disease. And then the shot that I gave him is called Bosi. And that's just kind of a selenium booster. Sometimes, depending on the quality of the forage the cows are eating, the calves can be a little deficient in selenium, and that really helps them get a good start to life. All right, I'll tell you what I want to do this morning. I want to get this combine out and get the bean head hooked onto it and make sure that everything is going to function with the bean head. Make sure we don't have any major unforeseen things that need done to that, because it's supposed to rain tomorrow afternoon. If I end up needing some parts or something, I can go on a parts run tomorrow. But let's go get it hooked up. Make sure everything's going to be okay. I didn't turn the battery back on. Up under the side shield here, there's a battery disconnect. There we go. Let's try this again. Much better. So this head was pretty clean when we put it away. I see the raccoons had a really good time with it in the shed over the winter. That's nice. There's two of these big ratchet straps. on this trailer that keep the bean head from bouncing off the trailer when you're going down the road. Okay, I'll get this thing most of the way lined up, and then I'll get out and show you just how the bean head actually attaches to the combine. All right, so on the front of the combine here, we have what's called the feeder house. Now, some people refer to it as the throat, but the technical term is the feeder house. And clear up top, we've got these big metal hooks. Remember these, they're important. Now, where the feeder house joins up to the bean head, on each side, there's a pocket right here for that hook to hook into so we can lift the head up. Now, once you got the head picked up, all of the hydraulic and electrical connections happen all at once right here in this one place. And then the drive shaft that provides all the power to turn everything on the bean head connects right up to here. Now, when you pull this lever over to lock in place all the hydraulics and electronics, it actuates this linkage right here and pushes out these pins on the lower front corners of the feeder house. Those pins engage with these slots right here so that the head can't fall off. Okay, let's go ahead and get hooked up. So we're just gonna pull forward very slowly. You wanna make sure that you're lined up perfectly as you get the feeder house positioned inside the back of the bean head. That's actually looking really good right there. I'm gonna go ahead and start to raise the head up. All right, I've got the hooks set in the back of the head now, so I'm gonna go ahead and rock the feeder house back a little bit while I lift it up. Now we'll go ahead and get out and hook up all the connections. Well, the first good sign is that the combine actually realizes that it's connected to the bean head now. It realizes that it's a flexible draper. It knows that it's been used for 307.6 hours, got the reel speed, total width of the implement, recording stop height, all those things are showing up. So that's a good sign. So I should be able to hit this button and raise the reel up a little bit. All right, that's good, that's working. Whenever I'm doing that, I'm checking down here at the hydraulic block and making sure I don't have any oil squirting all over the place and running down the side. Because if it's gonna leak, that's probably where it's gonna leak first. I also should be able to use these side switches to make the reel move forwards and backwards. So that's working. That's a good sign. No leaks. Now I'm gonna go ahead and slowly start it up and make sure the belts and everything are gonna turn. Okay, that's a good sign. All the draper belts are moving. Listen and see if we have any bad sounds. Everything sounds good. So the one last thing I want to check here quick before I pull up to the shop and start inspecting all the parts is I want to check the header height control, make sure that's actually going to work. So underneath the bean head, there are sensors that detect whether or not the bean head is in contact with the ground. So number 1 is all the way up. So if I hit the number 2 or number 3, it should put it on the ground. So I hit the number 2, look over here at the corner post, and that's how much pressure I'm putting down on the head. I can adjust that right here with this knob. So if I adjust that up and down, I should actually be putting more or less pressure on the ground with the head, and I should be able to see it reacting to that. You probably can't see it from here, but I can see it happening on the head. So since this head is so wide and the whole thing needs to be touching the ground all the time, it also needs to be able to tilt to the left and the right. So if I take this other switch and work it left and right, you should be able to see the feeder house actually tilting. If you look in the middle of that black rubber piece, there's an indicator that shows how far you're tilted to the left or the right. So I'll go ahead and hit the number 2 again. Drop the head down on the ground. In fact, let's switch it to number 3 because that's a little lower pressure. And we'll just drive right here. There's kind of a hump over there leading into the grass. So if I drive kind of with the edge of the head over that hump, I'll be able to see if everything's going to react and keep the head on the ground. So you can see the left side of the head is going over the hump right now. It's tilting to compensate for that hump. So looks to me like everything is working perfectly the way it should be. Now we can go ahead and pull it up in front of the shop and check some of the parts. So there's kind of a lot of hydraulics on this head, so I like to run around and make sure that I don't see any leaks at any of the hoses or fittings or any of the places on the frame where the hoses go through. Go ahead and open up these side doors. Inside here you'll find a drive shaft. I want to make sure that these universal joints are in good shape and there's not any slop in there. And then I'm going to have to take this plug out of this gearbox and make sure there's enough oil in the gearbox. So these yellow poly skid plates are the part that's always in contact with the ground. So if I grab a hold here and flex this up and down, you can actually see that sensor moving. See that? That's how it actually senses that the head is in contact with the ground. Then I need to start at one end and work my way all the way to the other end, taking a look at every single one of these sickle sections and every one of the guards that protects the sickle sections and gives it something to cut against. We want to make sure that these are good and sharp and that we don't have any broken off or any that have chunks missing out of them. And sometimes the tops of these guards will shear off or break off from a rock. I'll come back from the other end and set the gap on all of these hold downs. You want to make sure these are gapped properly so that they're not wearing a hole in your sickle section, but you definitely want them to be keeping that sickle section down in contact with the bottom of this guard so it has something nice and sharp to cut against. This one here is riding a little too hard. It's kind of cutting a groove in that sickle section. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I can feel it with my finger. And then this one right here is not even making contact. So we need to go ahead and adjust those. So this is really simple. All this takes is a 10mm socket on this bolt at the back of the hold down. If I turn it clockwise, see that gap getting smaller? Now I'm going to turn this one counterclockwise, and that gap will get just a little bit wider. Now there is a proper spec for the gap here. You could stick a feeler gauge in and do it perfectly, but I just like to set it by feel and wear pattern because the sickle isn't perfect. It's got just a little bit of flex and wave to it. So you kind of just have to set each individual one based on how it's working. As you can see on this one, if I push that section down just a little bit, it can still create a little bit of a gap. And then this one here is now just barely lifted off the top of that sickle section, so it's not going to be wearing into it anymore. That's the way I like to do it. It might not be textbook, but it works good for me. Well, that's pretty much it on the bean head. I've got it sitting on the ground right now so that all the oil can run to the front of the gearboxes so that I can pull the dipsticks out of the gearboxes and make sure they have enough gear lube in them. And then hit it with the grease gun and it's pretty much ready to go to the field. That was the one thing I was concerned about, was the bean head, because it's really the only thing that hasn't been looked at yet this year. The combine was down to the John Deere store. The corn head is down to the John Deere store. We're actually supposed to be getting a different corn head, but it hasn't showed up yet. So they've got our old one rebuilt. If we have to, we'll end up running that one again this season. So now that I have been through the bean head a little bit, I feel a little bit better, like we're pretty much not going to get blindsided by something huge right before harvest. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you'll be back next week, because I think next week I'm going to go out and pick some corn and see how we did with our emergence flagging trials this year. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you next time.